light was going off.
Yeah, but it didn't ring, did it? Oh, I fixed that.
Oh, all right.
I just like to bother her.
That's great. Oh, we're good. Master got one of them animals when they put them dogs in just gold underneath.
How are you?
Oh, really? It's for Amy.
No.
Did you already put it in?
He's got it. Yeah, he gets it.
Good thing I have money in my pocket.
Jack, you're safe.
None of my comments came.
You signed the book?
I'm going to do it tonight, Ed.
Okay.
Yep, I have them set up so I can do it.
Oh, great book.
I can't
highly
wait. So
recommend.
if I pause for a second.
I highly recommend it.
Like yours?
Very good book.
How are you, Hope?
I'm good. How are you?
So you don't remember, like, when we were here in 1970, I was so impressed. There'd be a city council meeting, or a planning meeting, planning commission meeting, or a zoning field meeting. The next day it was in the paper, everything was
Oh, for years I always really enjoyed the fact that we had local news. I thought it was so
It did it all the way through, and it started falling apart a little bit. I would say around 2001. David Dixon and I talked about this.
You know how you Republicans are.
They had a nice cadre of reporters.
Mayor, are these from you?
And they were trouble keeping reporters because they were so good.
Well, I didn't have a party that year.
Yeah.
Which wasn't bad.
And why?
But they still...
Garrett's going to have one on July 1st.
48 hours.
Well, thank you.
City council because no one didn't have any restaurants. And it wasn't... Facebook and, you know, it wasn't like it was now. But
It's the appointment by the mayor. It's for the JED. You don't have anything to do with it. Well, it's an appointment for me.
It's in 24 hours. And so then they find out a week later.
If you live in the Kent, you wouldn't be running for the Franklin Jet,
You know, it's
or the Brimfield Jet.
not good. It's not good for democracy.
Where we want.
I know. I'd probably.
I'd get them both.
Uh,
Here's
Here's the names. There's only one
Editorial
guy.
board without speaking.
Shaw.
kind of let everybody go.
Right.
All of a sudden.
Right. And you know,
I mean, I
Ready to move?
yeah, I get the record, yes. Here it is, right here.
Good evening. Welcome to the December the 15th regular council meeting. Would the clerk please read the roll?
Mr. Amrine?
Here.
Mr. De Leon?
Here.
Mr. Ferrara?
Here.
Mr. Kuhar?
Here.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Here.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish? Here. Mr. Sidoti?
Here.
Mr. Turner? Here. And Ms. Wallach? Here.
Okay, we have opening remarks by Mr. De Leon.
I just want to wish everybody happy holidays and to be safe. And with that, where's the flag? Oh, the flag's right there.
Keep moving around.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You need a motion for the minutes, Mike.
I'd like to move the minutes of November 17th, 2021, and the special council meeting minutes of December 1st, 2021.
Who seconded it?
Second.
Gwen? Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, communication, public communication. Will the clerk read the names that signed in?
First person up is Miss Diane Smith.
Don't say anything yet, Diane.
Okay.
While the law does not require council to provide time for the public comment, we have historically invited the public to make comment, and we appreciate their input. This is a time when residents and others can comment on matters that concern them. However, if we will not engage in any debate, and as president of council, I reserve the right to end the public comment that are disruptive, embarrassment, harassment, or otherwise objectionable. We ask that you come to the podium, speak your name, your address, and we'll give you 3 minutes to share your concern with us. Now, Diane.
Hi, my name's Diane Smith. I'm not sure if there's anybody here who doesn't know me, but for the moment, I'm your reporter for the Record Courier. Caitlin McGarvey has moved on to bigger and better things, and I just wanted to, touch base with you folks because I think there might be a little bit of confusion because we have been working from our homes for a year and a half. And some of you may have noticed that our office that we used to occupy out on West Main Street is now becoming Bridge Bible Church. So I just wanted to allay any concerns that the newspaper is going away. They are not moving us to Akron, except me, because I live there. But there is talk about moving us to a smaller office in Ravenna. They don't seem to be in any real big hurry to do that because we are still working from home because of the pandemic. But I just wanted to let you know they are replacing Caitlin. And I also wanted to do a little plug for the Record Courier News Guild. Caitlin loved her job, but she was not paid a living wage. And as long as, there's a new reporter who's going to be coming in, as long as we are not paid living wage, we will still continue to be a revolving door and a training ground. So local news is something that our guild is very passionate about, and we're very passionate about saving local news. And you can't save local news without saving the jobs of the people who live there, who work there, and provide that local news. And part of that is paying us a living wage. So I just wanted to let you know we are here and we are working on it. A few of you may remember that I was here 3 years ago for similar reasons. So,
Okay, thank you. Next.
Dr. Nelson.
Once again, name and address, and we'll allow you 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Geraldine Hayes Nelson. I live at 795 Admore Drive, Kent, Ohio. And many of you, you have received a letter from me. That letter provides some background as to why I stand here today. My children grew up in this community, graduate of Roosevelt High School, and I stand here because as I look out, I see my children's teacher, I see my children's principal. Some of you, my kids, our kids were besties, hung out together. I see the mayor, who's been around for, you know, they've known you as the mayor. How about that?
All my life.
So, when they come to downtown Kent, and they enjoy that, they're very much a part of the community. But as the past president of the PTA at Roosevelt High School, I worked hard, I prayed hard, and I stood for equal rights and inclusion for students, for all people. Today I stand up for our city, and I stand up as a proud resident. I did all my time at the university. I have retired from the university. But I think it's time for our city, and I call it our beloved community, to move the needle so that all voices are heard. And in doing that, I'm asking and coming to this group to say that there's a need for the city for commission on inclusion, a group to come to provide active voices to address systemic racism. You know, the Civil Rights Acts of 1964 outlines all those things about discrimination. I don't want to read that because I don't want to go into my time, but what I want to say to you is that I'm committed. My children love. I have my grandchildren at Long Quarry Elementary School, and they're Girl Scouts in this community, and I want them as being African American and Latino children growing up. I want them to be able to feel even more a part of the community. There was a reason why I was a PTA president for umpteen years, was because I wanted to make sure that the students in our community were able to, particularly in the high school, as they're leaving, matriculating into higher education or moving on, that they could see a person that looked like them in somewhat of a leadership role within their schools. I stand here today and plead and ask that there would be some consideration that this council would take heed and would listen to make sure that we can continue in our beloved community to grow it, to educate, but more importantly was to be able to plant those roots so that everyone could feel that they are a part and they belong here. I can go back to working at the institution as to how new faculty who came in and some of the incidents that happened. So it's documented. And I'm not asking you to say it, and we can talk about that, but I know that we still here. I'm still here. My children are still here. I see a Cleveland Browns sign. I'm still supporting the Cleveland Browns. And sometimes you look at that and you get a little dismayed. Things have happened in my city, I get a little dismayed, but I'm still fighting, and I'm still an active part of this community. So on behalf of my grandchildren, my children's children, I ask that we as a people can build a better world. And when we build that better world and a better community, we all become better people. Thank you.
Thank you. Further?
Jennifer Case.
Give your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Case, 315 East Grant Street in Kent. I have to read them. I'll get too nervous. Hello, my name is Jen Case. I've been a resident of Kent since 2006. I love my community. In fact, my husband and I have a running joke for every time something cool happens in our town, such as seeing someone we know downtown, attending a wine and art festival, or going ice skating with our kids. I turn to him and say, I love Kent. And he usually tries to beat me to it, because he knows I always say it. As much as I love my town, and as much as I like to think of it as a progressive, open, neighborly community, I have learned that I cannot kid myself by thinking we don't have any problems with racism and racial injustice. One of the things about being white is that we tend to view ourselves as the norm, and we tend to consider ourselves pretty nice. Upon first glance, so does Kent fit the description of the norm and pretty nice? Upon first glance, sure. But is it pretty nice for everyone? Does being a normal town mean it feels safe and accepting for everyone? After opening up my ears and heart to stories of folks in Kent that don't necessarily look like me, I'd have to say no. A few years ago, I started my own anti-racism journey. I started this by doing some reading alone, then in a group with other white folks at Kent UCC, and another group with a mix of people, both white, brown, and black, who were seeking to understand our own implicit biases. Essentially, we did an audit of our hearts, our minds, and our communities, and saw that there were so many unexplored areas and beliefs, both in ourselves as individuals and in our society, that were really rooted in white supremacy and needed to be closely examined and unlearned. We were absolutely blind to these things before and thought it was just fine to be nice, colorblind white ladies. But it wasn't just fine. And I'm so grateful that I learned and am learning to do better. Kent isn't just fine either. We have room for improvement, lots of it. And a great way to start making these improvements is by appointing an anti-racism commission, or inclusion commission, as Dr. Nelson stated, that can open up an avenue for reviewing practices and policies, and for giving a space for marginalized voices in Kent to be lifted up and heard. I am in support of the NAACP's initiative requesting Kent City Council to consider forming an anti-racism commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Renee Rahutsky.
Again, give your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
I'm Renee Rahutsky, 237 Highland Avenue in Kent. I'm also here to support the Anti-Racism Commission. I actually work for a national religious institution, some of you might know that, and we had good intentions about being good white anti-racist people, but we, through some difficult things that happened, discovered that we were actually a pretty awful place to work for black and brown people in our institution. So our governing board established a commission to look at our organization with the same kind of anti-racist lens that the NAACP is asking you to use. We are almost 5 years in, and actually it's been great and transformational. I happen to be on a hiring team, and we used a new process that really created a level playing field. We ended up hiring a candidate who was a queer, indigenous person who was 20 years my junior. They are one of the best, wisest colleagues that I have had in my 11 years working there. I am learning things that I never would have otherwise, and it's made me better at my job. Good intentions were not enough for our institution, even though we were a faith community. We needed to be intentional, and a commission is what made it happen. I hope that you'll consider it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Nancy Warlop.
Your name and address in 3 minutes.
My name's Nancy Warlop, and I live at 491 Earl Avenue in Kent. I'm here representing the Kent Interfaith Alliance for Racial Reconciliation and Justice, or KIFA, as you may know us. I'm addressing this body this evening in support of a motion to establish a commission on racial justice. I know there are those who have said that there's no racism in Kent, or that talking about it creates it. But, in fact, within the past year and a half, we've all been witness to public displays of racial hatred And to not talk about it or address it is to condone it. On July 15, 2020, the City of Kent created Resolution 2020-60 affirming that Black Lives Matter and that the City of Kent is committed, let me see if I can find it, is committed to condemning racism and encouraging a commitment to fair and equal treatment for all. It says in part, whereas the mayor and city council vow to work with and support, racism and hate have no place in Kent, and we are committed to working actively against all forms of racism and injustice. It goes on to say, now therefore be it resolved that, Section 2 states, the mayor and the city council are committed to engaging in continuing communication and dialogue with the community to address issues of systemic racism and intolerance and their impact on individuals and on the community as a whole. This is on your website for anyone who wants to read all of it. These are lovely words with good intent, but without action, they just remain words on paper. And in October of 2020, the Kent Interfaith Alliance addressed a letter to City Council. It's 2 pages, so I'm not going to read it, but it said, in part, racism exists in Kent, and it cannot be eradicated until it is named and addressed. Open-minded examinations of policies and practices can move Kent toward the ideals of equality, freedom, and compassion, the foundations of America and of our religious beliefs. And goes on to say later, we encourage City Council members to create a commission to nurture the roots of the Tree City. The commission can undertake activities that make all feel welcome. When problems arise, it can serve as a place where restorative reconciliation can safely take place. And
Your time's expiring. Can you wrap it up, please?
Yeah, I just want to say that in order to actualize the resolution, to formalize and organize it, a commission needs to be created to address the problems, to address the needs and needed activities in Kent, to make it a more welcoming and just place.
Okay,
Thank you.
Next.
Lee Brooker?
Once again, name and address, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Thanks. Lee Brooker, 814 Hudson Road. And I, of course, also encourage Dr. Nelson's initiative and appreciate, Councilman, your work. We need to not only discuss creating such a commission, but create it tonight, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Further?
John Thomas?
Name and address for the record in 3 minutes, John.
John Thomas, 1621 Chadwick Drive. I'm here tonight to speak specifically and generally about the area which includes in concept form, so they say, the quote-unquote intergenerational village. And I'm asking with this statement for this council and the city to try to establish a partnership including Kent State University and other necessary partners to establish a land conservatorship in the area which would include the proposed intergenerational village, but that would only be part of the area. I ask you to at least begin discussions with the university, because as I have said in previous meetings, and especially to this council on November 17th, this body is the only body that I can appeal to in a public forum to begin to throw ideas out, to be considered, other than to develop this land or to develop the land to the extent that the university has been discussing and currently has 3 entities working on proposals. And anytime I think about what might go on, that 50-year-old song from Joni Mitchell always hums in my head. Part of the lyrics are, "Hey, farmer, farmer, put up a parking lot." And it still rings true today, 50 years later. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Next.
Eric Nichols?
Name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay. Eric Nichols, 1560 Chadwick Drive. I'm just up here today. We distributed printouts of the results from the survey that we sent to all of our neighbors. We did this after the last council meeting to gather broader feedback. We know who responded and who has been at some of these meetings, and the survey is certainly not encapsulating of everybody's opinion. There's folks that have been at these meetings that their concerns are not recorded on here. But you can see from those results that overwhelmingly everybody is very concerned about a lot of these issues, in particular around the environment, fitting for the Tree City. But we just want to make sure that you guys are aware that we have concerns about this project, should it go forward or not, and also that we will be forming a community group. We'll be working with Robin to get that off the ground, to sort of open the door for broader communication for matters that directly affect all of us. So thank you for your time and attention to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Further?
Wendy Uzick?
Name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. My name is Wendy Uzick, P.O. Box 365, Kent, Ohio. I'm here to represent the concerned neighbors of KSU. According to the survey that we commissioned that Eric mentioned this month, 66% of the respondents are current and past professors, employees, and students of KSU, which tells me that we are clearly the original intergenerational village. At Monday night's meeting, a timeline was presented that showed community involvement in their project, but we have no idea of how or when this community survey was conducted and who was included. Since KSU claims that they want to build trust with their neighbors, the time for transparency and inclusion should have been at the beginning of the planning of this project so that community residents would not have been left feeling as if they missed the train. Most questions went unanswered at the October meeting and again at the December meeting. Most of the neighbors left Monday's meeting feeling censored, patronized, and cut off when questions were asked. The panel consistently deferred our questions and concerns to the tender mercies of a yet-to-be-selected developer. It seemed as if the meeting was just another formality to add to the PowerPoint timeline and claim that the community was consulted. In doing this, KSU is abdicating responsibility and leaving the community with an extreme sense of unease. So why am I here tonight? I believe that KSU needs to include community on their steering committee first and foremost. That the developers should see the concerned neighbors' concerns via that survey before even drafting a first proposal, because it makes no sense to me to include the community in conversation after the proposals have been made, according to KSU's guidelines. 94% of the respondents stated that they were concerned about environmental issues. 82% stated that they were extremely concerned about these issues. The guidelines, or the examples presented in the PowerPoints shown by KSU, showed inconsistencies on their maps. In one example, it stated, to keep the existing tree canopy, the little yellow tag that you could see on their map. And then on the other map, it showed developed buildings and roads intersecting the same exact area. It intersects the important and unique forested land, clearly disrupting the tree canopy that they were claiming to preserve. KSU should stand by their mission to be positive for the natural environment. But the definitions that were provided on Monday night's meeting only referred to the human environment. There was no reference to preserving and protecting this forested land without disrupting the existing tree canopy or adversely affecting the drainage of these vernal ponds and wetlands. If the concerns of the original intergenerational village, us, are not addressed in a responsible fashion, I ask, how do we suppose that the next intergenerational village's concerns will be considered? Thank you.
Thank you. Further, Amy?
Brian Colat? Collett?
Give your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes, sir.
My name is Brian Colat. I live at 300 North Water Street. And I'm here also speaking for my wife, Christine Richter. I've lived there about 10 years at 300, and she's been there about 12. And parking has been kind of an issue lately. Up until, well, most of those years, there was a small lot up on Portage Street that we were able to park in without an issue. We got a permit, and it worked out pretty well. But since they've been working on the renovation of that building and with the construction in the street, North Water, it's been in a little bit of an upheaval. But more recently, the council has been good enough to allow us spaces there with a permit to park overnight. Right out front of the building, there's 6 or 8 spaces that we've been making use of. Our issue, and what I'm requesting tonight, is that the council consider allowing us to park there during the day as well, without the 2-hour restriction. We've all been ticketed several times. It's pretty easy when you're living there to get involved in things, or, you know, unless you set yourself an alarm, you'll miss the 2-hour window, and next thing you know, you have a ticket. What we've been doing is moving a car a couple of spaces, you know, in that same area right out front every 2 hours when we can, you know, when we do that. But again, it's a little bit of a problem, I guess, especially when we're getting ticketed if we miss that window. So I'd just like to request that the council be kind enough to consider lifting that restriction for those of us that have that resident permit right out front and allow us to park there all day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Amy, further?
Nathan Borakowski.
Name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes, sir.
My name is Nathan Borakowski. Address is 300 North Water Street, Kent, Ohio. I'm going to address the same issue that Brian addressed. We do live in the same building. I've had several tickets dismissed by the police department for being written outside of the ordinances currently. The issue we face is none of us really have 9-to-5 jobs. Our vehicles are generally parked outside of our building during the day, and it is nothing short of a major inconvenience to set an actual alarm every 2 hours to move your vehicle a spot over. We do all frequent the local businesses. The owner of Benttree, owner of Opti Fitness, both businesses across the street and below our building have stated that our parking spaces don't affect their business regularly during the day, and they would have no issue with us being able to park during the day without being ticketed or without the 2-hour ordinance being enforced. I've been a resident of Kent for a long time. alumni of Roosevelt High School. I love living downtown. I love the city. I just want to be able to park where I live downtown without these restrictions. We do pay for monthly permits that were provided. The monthly permits allow us to park overnight and negate the 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. ordinance. We're just requesting that those permits, as well as covering the 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. ordinance, also cover the 2-hour parking ordinance during the day and allow us to park essentially there. We understand that there's a 24-hour parking violation citywide, or storage parking as they call it. We're not necessarily asking to leave our vehicles parked outside for days on end. We just don't want to have to go out and move them every 2 hours. We do get sick sometimes, we stay home. We like to take vacations sometimes, we stay home. We just want to be able to park our vehicles outside where we live. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next, Amy.
That was our last speaker.
All right, written communication. By the way, if anybody has their concerns on paper and haven't given them to the clerk, you can still do that. All right, Amy.
The Standing Rock November meeting minutes and the December meeting agenda was received on December 1st, 2021. An email was received on December 7th, 2021 by Mr. Dennis Sachs thanking City Council for his appointment to the Architectural Review Board and endorsing the reappointment of Kevin Kugel to the board. This email was forwarded to the council members on December 8th, 2021. And then communication received after the agenda was published. I received the Parks and Recreation November board packet on December 10th, 2021. A letter from Dr. Geraldine Nelson regarding the possibility of the city exploring a standing commission to address systemic racism was received and forwarded to council on December 15th, 2021. An email from Eric Nichols, president of Eric Does Data, LLC, regarding survey results collected on KSU Intergenerational Village project was received and forwarded to council on December 15th. And emails from the following residents supporting a creation of a commission to examine racism in Kent were received today and forwarded to council. They were received from Kathy Kearns, Iris Meltzer, Lee Brooker, Rick Coxley, Pam Quellhorst, and Barbara Hannaford. And then finally, I received a liquor license transfer request today for the Pit Stop Pub, LLC, doing business as Pit Stop Pub at 164 Cherry Street. And Chief Shearer had no objections to this transfer.
Move to return, no objection.
The second?
Second.
Second by Jack. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Further?
That is all.
All right. City Manager's report, Mr. Amrine.
Yes, I'd like to move numbers 1 through 7 on the city manager's report.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion on any of that? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Moving on to standing committee and legislation. Under the committee of the whole, I need a motion to accept the minutes of November 17th and December 1st.
So moved.
Roger?
Second.
Oh, okay, second by Roger. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. There is no action. We have 2 appointments to make tonight. First one is for the ARB, and the candidates were Kevin Kugel and Valerie Landers. Is there a motion? Mr. Sidoti.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move a suspension in filling the ARB position pending the completion of the council directed updating of the board's guidelines and operating procedures.
Second that.
Second by Mr. Turner. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, I think that both candidates have a lot to offer in many ways, and they'll have an opportunity because the process for the review of the Architectural Review Board is going to be open up to the public. And it would be interesting to see, they stood here and said that they were real interested in being part of it. This way they both can be part of it without either one of them being appointed at this point. And at some point they may decide after the completion of the rework, they may not want to be part of it. So my feeling is I think we ought to let it sit, and hopefully we'll have all this work done by April or May, and then at that point we could consider filling it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Turner, you have discussion? You second the motion?
I totally agree with Mr. Sidoti's position and logic on that.
Anybody else have discussion? See no other discussion, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
No.
sign. One no. Okay. All right, moving on. We have an appointment for the sustainability, and that's Andrew Shaw.
I'd like to,
Amy? Or Heidi, I'm sorry.
yeah, I'd like to move the reappointment of Andrew Scholl to the Sustainability Commission.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Jack. Is there any discussion? Further? None?
I just want to say that I feel like he's done an excellent job on the commission, and I'm really grateful that he has chosen to reapply and that he selected as his first choice the Sustainability Commission.
Okay, thank you. Jack, do you have any?
Yeah, I echo.
No other
Heidi's comments.
discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Okay. Now, we need to authorize, well, revision of it is draft number 2021-126 is a moot point right now.
Oh, authorize the insertion of names. So it'll be inserting Andrew Scholl.
I'm just talking about the ARB now.
There is no draft.
The motion on the floor was to, not to make that appointment. So now we're going to move to draft number 2021, right?
21, 27.
Or 27?
We missed section 5.1.4, authorize insertion of names.
Well, that's what I'm after.
Oh.
I'll
Mike?
I move the authorization of 2021-127, 2021-128, and 2021-129. Is that what you're after?
No.
Heidi?
With their names inserted. There it is.
That's it.
I knew I was missing something.
There's only one name.
Well, there's names in the other
All right,
ones.
we revised one. Okay. Heidi, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say,
Well, Mike needs a second.
second.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-127 in title only?
Draft number 2021-127, a resolution appointing Andrew Scholl to the Sustainability Commission and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Amrine.
Yes.
Mr. De Leon.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar.
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Turner.
Yes.
And Ms. Wallach.
Yes. Move adoption.
Second.
Second by John. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Amrine.
Yes.
Mr. De Leon.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar.
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Turner.
Yes.
And Ms. Wallach.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-127 has passed.
Okay, the next two are actually mayor's appointments, but would the clerk read draft number 2021-128 in title only?
Draft number 2021-128, a resolution confirming the City of Kent Mayor's appointment of David Smeals to the Community Reinvestment Area Housing Council and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mike. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. De Leon.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar.
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Turner.
Yes.
Ms. Wallach.
Yes.
And Mr. Amrine.
Yes.
Move adoption. Second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. De Leon.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar.
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Turner.
Yes.
Ms. Wallach.
Yes.
And Mr. Amrine.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-128 has passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-129 in title only?
Draft number 2021-129, an ordinance confirming the City of Kent Mayor's appointment of Annette Petranek to the Franklin Kent JED and declaring an emergency.
Suspension.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Please call the roll for suspension.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar. Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Turner.
Yes.
Ms. Wallach.
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
And Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Rogers. Any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg? Yes. Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-129 is passed.
Okay, thank you. That's it for committee of the whole, community development. Mr. Kuhar?
Yes, I'd like to have approval for the minutes of December 1st, 2021, and the one action.
So moved.
Second.
Second. I don't think we needed Mike's second. Turner second, John.
Okay.
Motion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, that passes.
And that concludes community development.
All right.
Anyhow.
Streets and sidewalks, Mr. Sidoti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the committee meeting minutes for December 1st, 2021, and the actions that are listed.
Second.
Second by Mike. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. Would clerk read draft number 2021-130 in title only?
Draft number 2021-130, an ordinance authorizing the City of Kent to submit a Phase 1 Builds grant request to fund the WRF Final Clarifier Rehabilitation Project Phase 1, totaling $1,391,300 to execute the subsequent agreement with the State of Ohio and to accept the grant with corresponding appropriation of funds and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension. Second.
Second by Garrett. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Adoption.
Second.
Second by Roger. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
And Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-130 is passed.
Okay, that's it for Streets and Sidewalk. Finance Committee, Mr. DeLeon.
I'd like to move the minutes of November 17th, 2021, and December 1st, 2021.
Okay, Garrett seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Okay, now there's 6 actions. Does anybody want any of those split? Seeing none, I'll move all 6 actions.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ferrer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-131 in title only?
Draft number 2021-131, an ordinance designating depositories for the City of Kent, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ferrer. Please call the roll for suspension.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
And Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Roger. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
And Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-131 has passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-132 in title only?
Draft number 2021-132, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to contract on behalf of the City of Kent with the Office of the Public Defender, Portage County, for the provision of legal counsel to indigent persons charged with potential penalty of incarceration for offenses committed in violation of the ordinances of said city for the period January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Mike. Please call the roll on suspension.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar? Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Ms. Schaefer Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-132 has passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-133 in title only?
Draft number 2021-133, an ordinance appropriating the various funds of the City of Kent to individual accounts for the current expenses of the city for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Mike. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish?
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-133 is passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-134 in title only?
Draft number 2021-134, an ordinance amending section 913.05 of the Kent Codified Ordinances, increasing the water rates of the City of Kent, Ohio by 3%, beginning with the first billing cycle in January 2022 and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Mike. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second by Mike, I guess. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Turner? I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Abstain.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-134 is passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-135 in title only?
Draft number 2021-135, an ordinance amending section 913.72 of the Kent Codified Ordinances, increasing the sewer rates of the City of Kent, Ohio by 3%, beginning with the first billing cycle in January 2022 and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Please call the roll on suspension.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
And Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll on adoption.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Abstain.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
And Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-135 has passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-136 in title only?
Draft number 2021-136, an ordinance authorizing the finance director upon the issuance of a certificate of availability of funds to pay certain purchase orders made that exceed $3,000 and declaring an emergency.
Suspension.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
And Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
And Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-136 has passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-137 in title only?
Draft number 2021-137, an ordinance authorizing the sale at public auction of surplus property not needed for municipal purposes by a live auctioneer pursuant to Section 721.15 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency.
Suspension.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
And Mr. Amorine?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
And Mr. Amorine?
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-137 is passed.
Thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-138 in title only?
Draft number 2021-138, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2020-126, the position allocation and general compensation plan, and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Mike. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amorine?
Yes.
And Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amorine?
Yes.
And Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2021-138 has passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-139 in title only?
Draft number 2021-139, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2020-129, the current appropriation ordinance, passed December 16th, 2020, so as to adjust appropriations, transfers, and advances from the various funds of the City of Kent to individual accounts for the current expenses of the city for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency.
Suspension.
Second.
Second by Mike. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amorine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
And Mr. Ferrara?
Yes. Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Roger. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amorine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
And Mr. Ferrara? Mr. Ferrara?
Yes. Sorry.
Ordinance 2021-139 is passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-140 in title only?
Draft number 2021-140, an ordinance authorizing the city manager or his designee to enter into a new contract with Portage County Solid Waste Management District for the collection of recyclables in the city of Kent without competitive bidding and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Please call the roll on suspension.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amorine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
And Mr. Kuhar?
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Mr. Kuhar.
Yeah. I'm going to vote against this, mainly because I've already started to see problems and heard complaints from residents about the every other week pickups with their cans overflowing on certain times, and I think it's a good thing for the citizens of Kent, and there's been problems in other areas of the same sort, so for that reason, I'll oppose it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amorine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
No.
That ordinance passes. Ordinance number 2021-140.
Okay, that's it for Finance Committee, and all my tenure on council, I don't know if we just, 140 ordinances we passed this year, and that's a lot less than I can remember in other years. So congratulate the staff and everybody else that makes this happen. So, all right, is there any unfinished business? Heidi?
Yeah, I'm going to name this unfinished business because I think we're returning to business that we had in the past. I would like to make a motion to move to committee a discussion of creating an anti-racism commission.
Second.
Second.
Yeah. So the reason why I didn't say let's just create an anti-racism commission is because I understand that there are decisions to be made about it. We should discuss like number of people on the commission. We should discuss the charge of it. We should discuss the process for selection. So it's a little bit more complicated than just saying, okay, we're going to do this. So I think it's worthy of our discussion, and I will definitely support such a commission. I just feel that we have a lot of gaps in the actual composition of it. So I would like to move it to committee for discussion.
Who seconded it? Mike, comment?
I agree with Heidi. I think there's some unfinished business there, so.
All right, open up. Tracy?
I would like to make an amendment to that. We have had a motion before to move it in committee, and it's just sat there. So I would like to make a motion to put it in committee in the January or the February committee.
Second.
You can't second it.
You can't second it.
Can't
Can't
second
second
your
it.
own,
You can
unless
make
you
a-
want to
make a new
withdraw your
motion.
motion to begin with.
No.
I will
All right, there's an amendment. Is there a second to that amendment?
second it.
Amendment by Mr. Turner. Any more discussion?
Yeah.
Mr. Turner?
Yeah, it was interesting that Dr. Hayes offered us an opportunity from a verbiage standpoint to look at this as an inclusion committee.
Mm-hmm.
I like that language for many reasons, one of which Garrett had brought up a while back, which is we'll be trying to identify issues of systemic racism and bringing people in as opposed to identifying such a negativism, even though that may also be exposed. But I think inclusion is a much better, vision to give to our community about what we're trying to accomplish here. This is not all about negativism and racism, and it's about bringing people together and doing things in a more positive fashion. I appreciated that language, and I think it will be helpful in us trying to identify what we need to do as a community. I think that from a staff standpoint, from a standpoint of council and the city and the people that we represent, that we understand we have issues here that we need to deal with, but this is a much more positive way of going about it. And so I would actually like for us to think about using that language of inclusion instead of racism. I think that can be divisive, and it can be a little problematic, and especially when it's unnecessary. We've been given I think a path to take on that, and I appreciate it. And so I think that's perhaps maybe something we should look at.
Tracy, you made the motion, right, for the amendment?
Yeah, I already talked, so what I was going to say.
All right. Roger?
Yeah, I agree with most everything that was said here, and I also agree that I thought Dr. Hayes' letter was outstanding until we get to the vision. I don't know that we already have, I don't know that we have a vision. I think that that's part of putting it in the committee, is to have conversation about the vision. It seems the recommendations that were listed here are pretty top-heavy, as the city as an entity of the public, the elected city, the operations seem to be at the heart of all those points, when I think that there's even deeper issues throughout the whole community. So I think if we're going to talk about Well, when we get into the committee, we can talk about these things, because I think that it's real critical that we look at, as Robin said, the idea of inclusivity and how do we help our community understand what that is, not just with city hiring or not with the interaction of people with the city, but interaction with one another. And I think that's critical. And if that isn't part of that conversation, then I think we're missing the boat. This might be a great opportunity. So I support the motion of let's get it into committee and let's have these conversations, which will be difficult and hopefully will allow people to really be honest, forthright, and really communicate effectively. That sometimes we don't do that well because, as so well stated by one of our speakers, we don't even know the things that we're saying and how they may be taken in the wrong way. And I don't think people have that intent sitting around this table or even in the people in the audience. So I think it's a good thing. Let's do it in January or February. And I agree with Tracy.
Who else had their hand up? John?
You know, living in Kent all my life, we've been through some of the rough racial times. And in the country where other places were having problems, we didn't have them. Even in our county, Kent was pretty smooth, so I thought we were doing okay. And the last thing we need is another commission. But you know, I start listening to people and realizing that not everybody treats people the way I might treat them or thinks the way I might think, or and try to be fair. And so maybe, you know, we have an abundance of good things that we have racially, but maybe there are some things that need addressed so we can kind of smooth off the graph. So, yeah, I'm going to vote for it.
Anybody else? All right. All in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now we have to vote on the original motion amended. Is there any more discussion on that? Seeing none. Oh, Tracy, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell a story. A really good friend of mine is African American.
Point of order.
Yeah, you got to speak to the motion.
Yeah, we'll do that in
the motion.
Okay, forget it. I'll save it.
Is there any discussion on the motion amended? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Tracy, now you want to say something?
I was going to say, a really good friend of mine is African American, and when we went out together, I always used to think that we went out on the same level. I don't mean to say that she's below me, but I'm saying I'm coming from my white privilege, and I never saw from her eyes where she was coming from. Every time she steps out of the door, she has to worry what people think about her. She goes to a gas station, she looks at something to buy, leaves the gas station. People run out after her and accuse her of stealing something because of her color. And that is just really the eye-opener to me. So I really think we need to have this commission.
Okay. Roger.
Yeah, it's ironic. This was stuffed into my planner on the plane when we were coming back from Tucson. I read a great book. I recommend it for everyone in the room. It's called Caste. And it's, I think what it does is it forces you to look at yourself first and then look at societal norms that have been established. And it's really interesting because, as Robin said, it's about inclusivity because it crosses all colors, it crosses all parts of the thing. So that's just something that just was ironic. This was in there, and great book, recommended highly.
Okay, Robin.
Yeah, first I want to point out that the inclusivity aspect, to me, I have to give great credit to the president of the NAACP for moving in that direction. I think that was a kudos. But I want us to understand there are going to be some bumps in the road on this. And when there are, we can't pick up our ball and go home. We have to be able to and willing to identify those areas of concern that we need to address that some of us don't think really need to be addressed, and some of us do, and ultimately there are going to be issues that we disagree on, and that's going to be the mettle of this community, to be able to then say, you know, we have to confront this. Hopefully, that's what will develop from this. It's an opportunity. Just like we have, I had an opportunity with the intergenerational village. Tough questions need to be answered. We got to get through these things. But this is a strong enough and progressive enough community that we can do those things. And my belief is that at the end of the day, when we face these challenges, we're going to be a much better community at the end of the day than we are even now. We're a good community now. So I'm looking forward to this. And thank you, the people of the city of Kent, for pushing us to have to confront these things. That's a good thing.
You know, Tracy originally brought this to council, and Dave and I have been talking about it for some time, and there is some intertwined things that we're working on. And I think it's good that we're going to sit down and isolate and find out just where everything is. So I think it's a good move, and I think we were talking about doing this in February because of reorganization in January, time-wise. So I think we'll schedule it probably for the February. So, no, it's a good move. Is there any other unfinished business? Moving on, new business, anything, Heidi?
Yeah, I would again like to put into committee exploring the issue of the lot on Portage Street and discussing the options for residents.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Jack. Further discussion, Heidi?
Yeah, I just really want to understand the issue from different perspectives. This is the first time I've heard about the residents' concerns. I'd like to hear from also, you know, who else may be impacted. So I think it's wise to put it in committee for a fuller discussion.
Is this temporary because of the construction there, or is this long-term?
No, it's not.
No, well,
No, it's
All right,
something.
Jack, you second the motion.
Yeah, I agree with Heidi.
All right, is there any other discussion?
yeah, I just think that it'd be nice to hear about how many parking permits are out there, how many spots are taken, and those type of things. I think we need to have the data to really make an intelligent decision on this whole issue. So I agree with the
John,
committee.
you had your hand up?
No, Garrett did. I had some information,
Garrett?
but not.
I was going to say, I don't think it's worthy of full council or committee time. I think the administration can handle the issue, and you know, you're going to open it up to parking everywhere and permits everywhere on street parking if you do it for one street. So it may be of interest for the committee or for the administration to look into it, but I think it's an isolated incident, not necessarily. I don't think it's council's job to count parking spaces.
And another thing, we have a parking action commission that has to be involved here, so it isn't.
We don't have a parking commission.
I've been to a couple of their meetings. Heidi?
Not
Yeah.
anymore. Dave's the parking action commission.
I want to push back a little bit on that because I think that it doesn't have to be a full-on discussion. It should be a report from our staff. I'm really wanting to get staff input as well as, you know, residents input so that, and see what their recommendation is for us to move forward on it. That's why I want it in committee. It doesn't have to be a big, long discussion, but we made this this option, and so I think that it's incumbent upon us to decide whether to expand it or not.
Okay, further, Garrett?
Yeah, I would just say again, it's, you know, it's an issue between the landlord and the tenant. When you know, the city's already established, whether it be the city or council or parking action committees established the parking areas and what's acceptable and how many places there are. You know, if that is the root of the problem, we'd be hearing comments like this all the time from residents that are having parking issues. But it seems to be one street, one resident, and you know, we just can't have a committee meeting for every individual issue that comes up. I say it's the issue between the, you know, what is it when you sign your lease? What does the lease say where your parking is? So.
Further? Mike?
Is there a parking action committee?
No.
I didn't
No.
think there was.
Oh, it was
No, but
disbanded?
We have we have a internal, what's the, transportation, TNES.
Traffic engineering and safety.
Yeah, so we have a police chief, well, Bridget, myself, various department heads that will
Okay.
evaluate parking requests as they come in, then we make a recommendation to council.
Because we used to have...
There was a
Okay,
regular
we
parking action
we
committee too.
disbanded that sort of and went to this way, right?
Right.
Okay. I thought we did, I just, Don, I didn't. So,
Gwen, go ahead.
Can we ask for a recommendation from that committee then, rather than sending it to?
Well, I think that's what Garrett's saying.
Yeah.
I think, I probably shouldn't speak because we're in a motion, but I am anyhow. This is my hall.
Then we can put that into committee.
But anyhow, I think time-wise, it'd be faster to go through the administration and us in January, December than bring it up in committee. So it's up to you people. Anybody else have any discussion? Heidi?
Question about that. So when do we actually get to hear this recommendation? Is this like something that that is done publicly, or, I mean, that's why I wanted to put it in committee, so that this would come up at some point, you know,
Yeah,
whether
well-
it be, you know.
I think Bridget obviously is going to have something to say about
I was
this.
just going to say, if it goes to
Go, come to
TES,
Mike, we can't hear you.
if it goes to TES for a recommendation, they can
I
then
asked-
present the recommendation, because it would be a change to the parking ordinance. 353.02 specifies the time periods for parking, so the recommendation would be from TES, which is all those department heads, of how that would be adjusted. So at some point, it would be coming, yes, because we'd have to change the ordinance,
Okay. All right,
if that's the recommendation.
all right. John brought up a statement that was a point of order, but to expedite this, I thought Bridget's input was valuable. Tracy?
So then, let me make an amendment to Heidi's motion to recommend the, what's it called, blah, blah, blah.
TES.
Refer to TES and then come back and present in committee when they have a recommendation.
Is there a second to that? Second by Mike. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Any more, Tracy? Mike, do you have anything? John, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think if that is the amendment, we should have some type of a timeline on it, because this thing's been flying around the air for quite a while already.
First I've heard.
First I've heard too.
Any more discussion? All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now we'll go back to original amendment, or
As
amended. Well, wait a minute, go ahead.
We just changed the amendment, changed the whole point of the motion. So what, if we voted in favor of the amendment, then why do you vote in favor of the motion that said put it in committee?
Withdraw the motion.
There's a
So
motion
you'd
on
have
the
to
floor,
shoot
you have to vote on it.
You'd have to vote it down, right? I think her motion, I think her amendment is counter to the motion, which, and I think the motion should have to be voted down first and foremost, because her amendment is counter to what the motion is.
All right, if we vote her motion down as amended, then we have to start all over.
Could I?
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to...
Wait a minute, Hope's got the
Oh,
floor
okay.
here. I'll take care of it, Robin.
Yeah, I think that the way the amendment went, that Garrett is correct.
All right.
That they should vote on Heidi's first, and then allow Tracy to make another separate amendment.
We should have never
her
voted,
motion-
we should have never voted for the amendment, then, is what
correct.
you're saying.
Right, yeah.
Um,
We can withdraw the
Want to
motion.
draw your amendment?
Sure, fine.
Who seconded it?
I did, I think.
No, Jack, no.
I seconded it.
Jack did. All right, we're going to vote to remove the amendment. So, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No.
Point of
I
order,
thought
we're voting to either pass or, because she revoked her amendment, so we're voting to pass or fail the original motion.
You can withdraw
But we're voting to remove her amendment.
No.
No, she removed
You
it.
can
What happened?
She withdrew it,
All right,
you don't have
okay.
to-
Sure, so
so you don't have to vote on
We've
that.
never done this before.
All right.
So we have to vote her motion down for it to fail.
All right,
Well, can she withdraw her motion?
all right, we're gonna,
Maybe she doesn't want
we're
to.
gonna,
How do you withdraw it?
we're going to, Heidi,
I am happy to withdraw it, because that's basically the intention that I had.
Can you
That's
withdraw?
it.
You have to
That
vote
is,
to
let's talk
fail it.
about it in whatever form that talking about it takes.
all right, who seconded it?
I'll second that.
No,
I
who
second
seconded the
her.
original? Okay.
I second.
All right, it's
How about
removed.
that withdrawal?
Now, somebody make, Tracy, make the right motion.
Now, I'd like to make a motion to put the parking dilemma into the
TDS,
committee, and then have
with a
them...
recommendation back to council.
Exactly.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Mike. Is there further discussion, Tracy? Mike, further discussion?
No, that's what I
Anybody else
seconded
have
last time.
discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Woo, got there.
We got to do it right.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, gotcha.
He did it, Steve.
All right, I guess we're done. New business, anybody? Any more? Any less? All right, this time we're going to have the three at-large people that congratulations, you won your re-election. Come forth. Hope is going to swear you in. Do you want to do it as a group, or do you want to do it each?
I'm good with a group.
I'm fine with
We could do
Yeah,
it.
we're good with group.
I wondered why Mike was all dressed up
Yeah.
tonight.
That's about
Yeah, he doesn't have shorts on.
I don't have my shorts on, yeah.
Because you're going to be in the Record Courier tomorrow, I think we can take our masks off.
Yeah, another... It'll be 27, 24.
You screwed it up, not me.
I don't know what's going on.
Would you raise your right hand? Repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear and affirm that I will support, uphold, and the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Ohio, the Charter, ordinances, and laws of the City of Kent, Portage County, Ohio, and that I will faithfully, honestly, diligently, and impartially perform and discharge all the powers and duties incumbent upon me as council at large in and for the City of Kent, Portage County, State of Ohio, according to the best of my ability and understanding. So help me God. Congratulations.
Can I put a plug in for people to run for Colgy? It would really be great to have a whole slate next time of people. We need to get more people engaged.
Yeah.
Robin's going to get on that.
I want a whole slate of people to run.
Second term, what term is this for you? Huh?
Thank you.
7? How many, what term is this year? Wow. Wow. No, good. Just kidding.
Oh, he's got to do it. Oh.
Okay. I state your name.
I, Jerry T. Fiala,
Do solemnly swear and affirm
and affirm
that I will support,
that I will support,
uphold,
uphold,
and defend the Constitution of the United States,
defend the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and the charter, ordinances, and laws
Charter, ordinance, and laws of the City of Kent,
Portage County, Ohio,
Portage County, Ohio.
and that I will faithfully,
I will faithfully,
honestly,
honestly,
diligently,
diligently,
and impartially perform and discharge
impartially,
impartially
and discharge
all the powers and duties
all the powers and duties
incumbent upon me
incumbent on me
as mayor and council president
as mayor and council president
in and for the city of Kent,
and for the City of Kent,
Portage County, state of Ohio,
Portage County, State of Ohio,
according to the best of my ability and understanding.
according to the best of my ability and understanding.
So help me God.
So help me God.
And your wife.
This is my fourth term, and when I'm done with this fourth term, I have 30 years of city government. The people of Kent, you need to get people out there to be elected to sit on this panel, because 30 years is too much for one person.
Amen.
Yeah.
It's up to you people.
4 more years.
4 more years.
Just keep bringing the candy, we'll keep reelecting.
Yeah.
All right, is there any council comments, Ms. Schaefer-Bitch?
Yeah, I want to speak to the issue of housing in Kent. And I attended the meeting on Monday and the meeting before that, and I want to say that we've had numerous discussions with Kent State University as one potential partner in developing new housing or redeveloping or fixing up the existing housing over several years' time. So I was pretty excited about the intergenerational village when it came up. And on Monday, I said that it's important to listen to the concerns of the neighbors, and that we think better together. One example of that thought process, thinking better together, was brought up tonight with the idea of the land conservatorship, which is an example of innovative thinking, a third way of doing things. I'm not sure if that can be done. I'm not sure of the ins and outs of the regulations or whatever. But I do want to say that, it's really important to expand housing choices in the city. It's difficult to survey the people that want to live in the city of Kent but can't find the right kind of housing, or want to stay in the city of Kent but are forced to go somewhere else because their housing needs aren't being met. So I know I'm going to continue to work towards that expansion of housing options, safe and decent housing, some affordable housing for sure, and just, it's something that we, with or without the intergenerational village, whether that comes to pass, this is something we need to really understand as a community, that we had a housing study done. It showed that we are deficient in certain kinds of housing, and that, the housing has to be put somewhere. I mean, we can look at redevelopment, that's expensive. We don't have very much land remaining that doesn't have something on it. So I just want to say that there are multiple sides to the issue, and I really hope that we can embrace the idea that, Kent has become a city that people want to live in, and maybe it's important to look at how we can make that happen.
Okay, anybody else? Robin?
In listening to a lot of things that have come forward,
You might want to use your...
I'm sorry. Thank you, Heidi. There's another issue to me, which goes beyond what Heidi says on target about the housing and everything. But there's an elephant in the room. It's our relationships and how we build relationships with perhaps the biggest institution and the one which is so beneficial to the city. It's transformative. It makes us what we are. Otherwise, and that's not a knock on Ravenna, but we would be another city. And we're going to have to start trying to do a better job in town gown, communicating our concerns, but also not being as cynical about the university. I've had issues that I've gone to with people, and that has popped up. And I ask them, I mean, what has the university done this year? Well, it's what I heard. It's May 4th. It's these things that have happened before, or just heard about, or spoken of. And I remember Harry Truman said something a long time ago. Imagine if we got rid of all the cynicism and we could work together, what a world this would be. And I think we have that opportunity, whether it's with race, whether it's with our, whether or not it's actually accurate, our feelings about the university. I think, first off, we ought to find out. But communication is huge. And I'm just looking at this right now. We have an opportunity to try to do some things. I don't know ultimately whether an intergenerational village could work here. I think that we've got the staff with Bridget, these guys that have immense knowledge about this and can help bring it along. But man, we got to have partners. We got to be able to work with people. We got to be able to work with the university. We got to be able to, if we're going to do big things and become a bigger community, these are the things that we have to do. We got to get beyond the negativism. We got to get beyond those things which can bind us up and stop us from moving forward. So, coming into this new year, I'm hopeful that next year will allow us that opportunity, and we will be able to take advantage of it. And we will be able to move our community forward. On race, I think Geraldine gave us, or Dr. Nelson gave us, an opportunity to be inclusive, which we would have been based on race. Now we can be based on inclusion. That's good for Kent. The opportunity for working with our university, irrespective of what happens now with the intergenerational village, and I am a little skeptical, but I think, man, we've got to work with the university to do better. It creates greater opportunities for us. So let's take that up coming into the new year. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Gwen, you had your hand up?
I did, yeah. Just real quickly, Joan Seidel's not here, so I just want to point out.
She's
Or
here.
Joan,
She's here.
there you are. You're behind a post. Joan, well,
always got a post.
sorry about that. I just wanted to point out our healthcare workers are maxed out. Our hospitals are literally full, and we're inching closer to 1 million Americans dying of COVID. We have vaccines available. The booster shot is effective and incredibly important, especially as we're looking toward a new variant that's coming through. It's very contagious. I'm not a medical doctor, but I do know that the science is there to protect people's lives. I would love to see everybody have a very happy and healthy new year, and I think part of that is going to be getting a booster shot. So if you haven't already, please consider it. And to all of our healthcare workers, thank you so much for doing an incredibly difficult job for so terribly long. So thank you.
Okay, Garrett, you had your hand up?
I just, I like the mayor likes to give me a hard time for being late, but I have 2 kids in activities, and I had to mention that tonight. I tried to make both of them. One was a diving meet, and the other one, we have one of the top 10 gems within the city of Kent for all the good things we have. Dr. Repke is the leader of the Kent Roosevelt Bands and Orchestra. Tonight and Friday at the school at lunch, and it's open to the public, they're going to perform the Christmas Pops Orchestra or band is performing at lunch, and I will tell you, if you are not in the Christmas spirit, you should go see them perform because they're absolutely excellent. It's fun, it's energetic, and it's a testament to Dr. Repke and the work he does with the kids. It's phenomenal, and I wish everybody could see that. And you should look on the or the city school calendar if you have any interest in music for any event that they do. They're all open to the public, and it'll blow you away how talented they are. So I hope that everybody does that, and wish everybody a happy holidays.
Roger.
Yes. You're welcome, Garrett. I got the privilege to hire Dr. Repke, so I'm glad that worked out. I just want to piggyback a little bit on what Robin had to say about the meeting on Monday night. I think, you know, as representatives of our community, and I think we all do this, we try to put ourselves into the shoes of the people. And the people who are there are, you know, who have lived there forever. I mean, I've lived on my little place in Elno since 1975, and you know, I can imagine if there was a big housing development coming in I understand the emotional side of that. That's a disruption to a regular way of life. But I also want to say that in all the years I've interacted with Kent State University, I think this was the most I've ever walked out of a meeting feeling like they were as transparent as possible. I felt that they gave what they said is what they meant, and what they meant is what they said. And I think that what Robin said about trying to interact in an effective way, it gets very frustrating for me. One gentleman talked about how many degrees that he and his family had from Kent State, and I would have to say, echo it, I'm in the same boat. I can't imagine the negative issues about the institution that comes from people who have graduated from there, who have worked there, who have retired from there. I can't quite understand that emotional side of it. I can understand the emotional side of, oh gosh, we don't know what this is going to look like. We don't know, you know, it's going to change our neighborhood and all that type of stuff. Because I feel that at this point, and I'm not just saying this because we have a new president or whatever, I just think that Kent State there were communication missteps, but they weren't intentional. They were a part of a larger plan that was put out 4 years ago, Dave, I think, when the first master plan came out. And the intergenerational village was a small part of that larger master plan. And as you know, Jim has led the process on the East Main Street. And I think what happens is, and I'm just as guilty of as anyone else, that's a lot to take in. And I just don't think the community took the whole thing and was able to really, you know, they saw a parking deck, they saw East Main Street, they saw, you know, a variety of different other things, and in an intergenerational village that no one even knew what that meant. And I think that's where the struggle comes from. It's an emotional kind of reaction. But in fairness to Kent State, I thought they did a nice job of acknowledging that there were missteps in terms of the process. And I don't believe the train has left the station. I don't believe that any decisions have been made. And I say that in total confidence. I can tell you that a few years back, I may not have been able to say that. And some of you remember my little tirade at the Bowman breakfast about we need to all work together. We're in a partnership with our university, and I was pleading with the university to look at it as a working partnership, and that we looked at it that way. I wanted to assure them that we were looking at it that way. So I think that these are the type of issues that more conversations needed. I have some questions along, I'm sure, what the neighbors have. I have questions too about the viability, the feasibility. I have less questions about the impact on the total town, but I do have great questions about the impact on that neighborhood and how do we mitigate that thing. And I think Kent State is very open to that. So, you know, ending the year with trying to better our community, whether it be race relations, whether it be our relationships with Kent State University, whether it be the relationships that we have with the people in our lives, and in trying to balance all that in the middle of a pandemic where we're all stressed out. I think we're in a good place. I think that having conversations, having difficult conversations in a caring way is what we need to do in this pandemic-driven world. So everyone have a great holiday. Those of you who celebrate, Merry Christmas. Make sure you have a Happy New Year, and try to stay safe. Wear your mask. Don't be like me here.
Anybody else? Mr. Kuhar?
Well, that all sounds pretty complicated to me, so I just have a couple simple things that I'd like to ask of you. The first one is, as a council, I would hope that in the coming years that we would keep our eyes and ears open, not only to the out-of-town money that comes in and builds the big, fabulous buildings, but keep our eyes and ears open to the needs of all the people of Kent, from the meekest to the wealthiest, and don't set them aside. And because that's how you integrate a community, is by bringing everybody in and thinking of the problems that the little people have. And other than that, the only thing I'd like to say is have a great holiday, however you celebrate it. Please be safe, and no matter what it looks like out there, the virus is still here.
Anybody else?
Amen.
Wow. All right, we're down to the mayor's report. Hot off the press. Our staff has been working very hard. This council has been working very hard. I know the three at-large people, as well as myself, when we were out there talking to people about getting reelected, even though we were all running unopposed, one of the biggest things was the concern of, is Kent ever going to have a city hall? And Mr. Rower gave me a written thing. We signed the contract for the city hall today. So.
Finally going to have a city hall.
Okay, the rest I have, and a lot of you touched on this, but we're in the season of believing. I don't care if you believe in just the holidays or Christmas, but what I ask you to do is respect each other how they do represent the holidays in their own way. There's a lot of different cultures out there, different ways. It may be Merry Christmas, it may be Hanukkah, it may be whatever, but respect each and every one how they celebrate it, because it's their right to celebrate. The other thing is the year end, and I have a little card for our clerk who works very hard for us, and we're going to present here with a card and a little gift from us.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
With that said, I think we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice New Year's and Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, listen.
So is this the mayor's doing it too?
Okay, I know that.
Ah, yeah.
Not that nice.
I have to chuckle.
Sure.
Oh, my goodness.
Good deal, Mr. Rower.
I guess we could keep it. What do you think? Finally achieved something.
Yeah. We need to look at the bigger context, but I did care about you guys.
We're all screwed up.
I was looking for my card, but I brought my tiny little purse today.
Happy
You guys know my...
New Year's, Merry
how to
Christmas,
reach
all
me?
that good stuff, okay?